Welcome back to True Crime Documentary YouTube channel. In the quiet suburban streets of Atlanta, Georgia, there lived a man who seemed to have it all. Griffin King was the embodiment of success, well-respected, charming, and living the life most could only dream of. He had a prestigious job in a high-end construction firm, a beautiful wife named Hannah, and a home in one of the most desirable neighborhoods. He was everything society praised: intelligent, ambitious, and attractive. His life seemed flawless, on the surface, but hidden beneath this seemingly perfect facade was a dark secret, one so profound, so deeply buried that it would bring everything crashing down. Griffin wasn't always Griffin. The life he'd carefully built, the relationships he'd nurtured, and the reputation he'd forged were all built on lies, lies he couldn't escape. In just a single night, Griffin's life would be unrecognizable. A murder, a secret identity, a life of lies. This is the shocking true story of a man who couldn't outrun his past. It's a story of deception, love, and loss, and it starts with a decision that would change everything. What happens when the life you've built, the people you've loved, and the identity you've so carefully crafted are threatened by the very secrets you've spent a lifetime hiding? This isn't just a story of betrayal. It's the story of a man who couldn't escape his own lies and a tragedy that left a community reeling and a life destroyed. The gripping account you're about to hear is nothing short of shocking. Stick with me until the end, because you won't believe what Griffin King was hiding and how his tragic story unfolded. Before Griffin King became the man he was known as, he was someone completely different. He was born Grace, a child in a small conservative town in Alabama where expectations were rigid and conformity was everything. From a young age, Grace knew she didn't fit the mold. While other girls played with dolls, Grace felt the instinctual pull to run with the boys, to climb trees and throw the ball with them. But society had a clear idea of who she should be, and it didn't line up with what Grace felt deep inside. As Grace grew older, the struggle deepened. Every day was a battle between what she felt and what the world expected her to be. The pressure to conform weighed heavily on her, and soon she realized something crucial that would shape the rest of her life, something she could never change about herself. She wasn't meant to be a girl. Grace was different, and the world had no place for her in it. In her small town, there were no resources, no support groups. The word transgender didn't even exist in her vocabulary. There was only confusion, isolation, and the overwhelming fear of rejection. Her peers mocked her. Her family, though loving, didn't understand her. Grace had to hide her true self, but deep down, she knew it wasn't just a phase. This was her truth. By her late teens, Grace knew what she had to do, though the thought terrified her. It wasn't just about how she felt. It was about how the world saw her. She faced a reality that could be nothing but devastating. Her true self would never be accepted. She couldn't live as Grace anymore. She had to become Griffin. With hormones, surgeries, and a carefully constructed new identity, Griffin was born. It wasn't easy. It wasn't quick, but by the time Griffin reached his mid-20s, he'd made a fresh start in Atlanta, a new city, a new life, far from the small town that tried to define him. He built a career in the construction industry, presenting himself as the man he always felt himself to be. But as Griffin's new life took shape, a dark shadow hung over him. The past never fully stayed buried. The fear of exposure followed him like a ghost, threatening to unravel everything he worked so hard for. In 2006, Griffin met Hannah. She was everything he dreamed of: beautiful, compassionate, and loving. Hannah had come from a family steeped in tradition, where values of faith, love, and community were sacred. She was the picture of Southern Grace, with deep blue eyes that radiated warmth and a smile that could light up the room. Hannah was everything Griffin had hoped for. Her unconditional love made him feel at home, something he had never truly experienced before. They married in 2007 in an intimate ceremony filled with friends, family, and a sense of hope. In that moment, Griffin felt like he had finally found peace. He had the job, the wife, the home, the life he'd always wanted, but the dark secret he had carried for years was never far from his thoughts. Every day, he feared that it would be discovered, that the truth of his past would come crashing into their perfect life. But Griffin loved Hannah. More than anything, he wanted to keep her happy. He wanted her to see him as the man he had become, not the person he had been. As time passed, Griffin's fear deepened. The weight of his secret grew heavier, and as their relationship deepened, the pressure to keep his past hidden became suffocating. The more Griffin fell in love with Hannah, the more he feared that the truth would destroy everything they had. By early 2012, the weight of the lies had become too much for Griffin to carry. The pressure of maintaining his facade was suffocating. He loved Hannah, but a part of him felt trapped, as if he were living someone else's life. That's when he met Stephanie Hart at the gym. She was confident, energetic, and full of life, a stark contrast to the tension Griffin felt in his own heart. What started as a casual conversation soon turned into something much more dangerous. Their connection was instant, and Griffin found himself drawn to her in ways he hadn't felt in years. She didn't know about his past, and for the first time in a long time, Griffin felt like he could just be himself, free from the secrets he'd carried for so long. What began as a flirtation quickly escalated into an affair. The excitement of sneaking around, the rush of living a double life, was intoxicating. Griffin had always craved validation, and Stephanie provided him with that. With her, he didn't feel like a liar. He felt seen, understood, and admired. But the more he fell into the affair, the more everything else in his life started to unravel. Griffin's behavior became erratic. He began lying to Hannah more frequently, saying he was working late, staying out longer than he should. Hannah, ever the perceptive wife, started to notice the cracks in their marriage. Her suspicions grew, and she began to ask questions. Griffin denied everything, brushing it off as work stress, but something inside him told him that the truth was coming, and it would be worse than anything he could have imagined. By March 2012, Hannah's doubts had reached a breaking point. She began to investigate on her own, feeling an unease that she couldn't shake. One night, after Griffin had told her he was working late, Hannah decided to follow him. What she saw that night shattered her world. From a distance, she watched as Griffin met a woman in a motel parking lot. The realization hit her like a ton of bricks. It wasn't just an innocent dinner or a late meeting. Griffin was having an affair. Heartbroken and confused, Hannah returned home that night, but she didn't confront Griffin. Instead, she searched through his things, looking for answers. What she found would devastate her. Hidden deep in a drawer was a set of medical records, records that didn't match the man she thought she married. Griffin's real name wasn't Griffin. It was Grace. The truth came crashing down. Hannah now knew the man she had loved, the man she had married, was not who he had presented himself to be. He had lied to her about everything, about his past, about his identity, and about the future they'd planned together. The betrayal cut deeper than any affair could. Hannah, overcome with shock and anger, confronted Griffin the very next day. She demanded the truth. Griffin, caught in his web of lies, confessed. He told her about his past, about the surgeries, the transition, and the identity he had fought so hard to maintain. But it wasn't enough. The lies were too much to bear. The hurt was too deep. Hannah, devastated, told Griffin that she couldn't continue living this lie. She threatened to expose his past to everyone, family, friends, colleagues, and the world. That was the final straw for Griffin. The man who had spent years hiding who he truly was could not afford to lose everything. In a moment of blind rage and fear, Griffin did the unthinkable. He killed her. In the aftermath of the murder, Griffin's panic set in. He staged the scene to look like a robbery gone wrong, but as detectives began to investigate, they uncovered a web of lies and contradictions that pointed directly back to Griffin. What had started as a life of deception spiraled into one of unimaginable tragedy. Griffin had lost everything: his wife, his home, his job, and his freedom. But more than that, he had destroyed the one thing that had kept him going: his sense of self. Griffin's story is a tragic reminder of the consequences of living a lie. It's a story of how deception, no matter how small, can spiral out of control and destroy everything you hold dear. Griffin thought he could outrun his past, but in the end, it was the lies that caught up with him, and the cost was far more than he could have ever imagined. So, what can we learn from this? That honesty, no matter how difficult, is the only path to redemption. Griffin's tragic fall from grace is a lesson in the importance of living authentically and truthfully, because when you live in fear of being exposed, you risk losing everything that truly matters. The most devastating part of Griffin's story is not just the death of his wife, but the death of the man he could have been, the man he might have become if only he had embraced his truth from the beginning. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Be sure to check out our other videos for more captivating stories. Take care, and we'll see you in the next one.